Bethlehem of Judea, during the reign of Herod, astrologers from the east arrived in Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the newborn ruler of the Jews? We observed his star at its rising and have come to pay homage." At this news, Herod became greatly disturbed, as did all of Jerusalem. Summoning all the chief priests and religious scholars of the people, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they informed him. Here is what the prophet has written. "And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, since from you will come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Herod called the astrologers aside and found out from them the exact time of the star's appearance. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, after having instructed them, "Go and get detailed information about the child. When you have found him, report back to me, so that I may go and offer homage too." After their audience with the ruler, they set out. The star which they had observed at the rising went ahead of them until it came to a standstill over the place where the child lay. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and upon entering the house, found the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and paid homage. Then they opened their coffers and presented the child with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, so they went back to their own country by another route. The Gospel of Christ. Please be seated. Maybe it's because I've directed far too many Christmas pageants, but when I hear the story of the Magi visiting the baby Jesus, I don't think about three kings at all. No visions of regal visitors decked out in their finest riding atop camels, guided by a star. That's not what I see when I hear this story. When I hear this story, I see the memories of little boys, all decked out in colorful, shiny robes that threaten to trip them up, giggling and roughhousing, and their cardboard crowns slightly askew. Of all the little boy kings that I've tried to corral, one of them stands out from all the rest. Perhaps I remember him so well because he was so little that we couldn't have him kneel at the manger, because we were afraid that he would disappear into the hay and our audience would only see two wise guys and not three. Maybe it was the speed with which he dashed in and out of the gang of shepherds who threatened to trip him up with their crooks. Maybe. But what I really think makes Jay stick in my memory is the ingenious way he solved the problem of his lost gold. That's what makes Jay stand out from all the other little boy kings for me. Little Jay's mother, like all the mothers of all the kings, was responsible for creating a facsimile of the gift her wise son would bestow upon the baby Jesus. Now, unlike some of the feeble efforts that I've seen over the years, Jay's gift of gold was a cut above the rest. Inside an elaborately carved box that his dad had picked up on his travels in the Middle East, Jay's mother had placed upon a bed of satin a carefully created block of wood wrapped in golden gift wrap. When the light hit his gift, it sparkled. It was splendid. It must have impressed Jay because he was forever opening up his box to show his fellow cast members his sparkling gift. And during the dress rehearsal, Jay's performance was magnificent. He positively perfected the art of gazing up at the makeshift star that hung above the altar just east of our makeshift manger. When he arrived at the place where the newborn baby lay in a makeshift manger, the baby just happened to be a little girl that year, Jay strode right up to her mother and opened the box containing his sparkling offering and proudly announced his gift of gold for the newborn king. They, whoever they are, they say that when a rehearsal does not go well, then the performance will be wonderful. So I was more than a little worried when our dress rehearsal went off so splendidly, because that could mean only one thing, and I wasn't looking forward to a performance where everything went wrong. And sure enough, unbeknownst to me, on the morning of his big performance, somewhere between his home and the church, Jay lost his golden gift. All he had was an empty box when he showed up at his father's pew, wailing because it was lost. Jay had no gold to give to the baby Jesus. Today, as I reflect on the plight of so very many children, I can't help thinking that my box feels a little empty. I can still see the disappointment on little Jay's face, and I want to wail. I think it was Boxing Day, the second day of Christmas, when I first heard about the little 8-year-old Guatemalan boy who died on Christmas Eve in the custody of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Felipe Alonso Gomez's death has haunted these 12 days of Christmas. Little Felipe's death, coupled with the knowledge that another child had died earlier in December, is an obscenity that ought to reduce every adult to wailing. Little Jakelin Cal McQuinn was just 7 years old when U.S. Customs and Border Protection failed in their duty of care. Little Jakelin and little Felipe's protection was sacrificed on the altar of a political idea which continues to put the protection of a border over and above the lives of children who are fleeing violence in their homeland. I confess that I have been more than a little obsessed this Christmas season by the plight of refugees. I found myself searching for all the information that's out there, hoping against hope that somebody, anybody, has a magic solution that will safeguard the lives of these refugees. But alas, like little Jay, I show up to greet the Christ child with what appears to be nothing more than an empty box. I've discovered all sorts of information in the past week. I would tell you all about what I've learned, but if the truth be told, the information is so very overwhelming that I'm afraid that if I stood here and told you all of it, we would all just end up weeping in despair. Suffice it to say that according to the United Nations Refugee Authorities, last year there were close to 70 million migrants who were displaced by war and violence. And there's no indication that 2019 will see these numbers go down. In addition to refugees, the United Nations estimates that 132 million people will need humanitarian aid in the coming year. The numbers are staggering, and the temptation is to simply move on, talk about something else, shed a tear or two perhaps, but move on. The other temptation is to crawl into bed and put the covers over my head. After all, I'm only one person. What can I do? The world is a very dark place. South Sudan, Yemen, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, more countries in South and Central America than I can name. And then there's the Rohingyas of Myanmar. Is it any wonder that we have become numb to the largest migration crisis since World War II? So let me say their names again. Little Jakelin and little Felipe. just 7 and 8 years old respectively. Jakelin and Felipe, remember them. Jakelin and Felipe were fleeing violence. They were accompanied by a parent. Parents who were helpless in the face of illnesses that under normal circumstances could easily have been treated. But these are not normal circumstances. These are dark days for migrants fleeing persecution, violence, and poverty. And lest you think that we in Canada are doing a better job than our American cousins, I would remind you that more and more of these migrants are showing up at our border. About 300 in 2016 unaccompanied minors, 500 in 2017. And the numbers have not yet been released for 2018, but speculations put the figure at about 1,000 unaccompanied minors. Information about the welfare of these children is difficult, if not impossible to discover. I know. I spent the last 3 days trying to find out. One thing I do know is these numbers are only going to increase. So is the rhetoric in Canada about how many migrants we can afford to let in. So what are we to do in the face of this darkness? Well, the good news is there are many, many organizations working to provide light in this darkness. Clear policy guidelines have been identified. Rich countries that receive relatively few refugees, and that's Canada, must increase their support to countries that are on the front lines and open their doors. That means we need to increase the pressure on our own elected officials. We need to work with advocates to ensure that countries on the front lines are first in line for financial aid. We need to advocate to prioritize the resettlement of vulnerable populations. And we need to take a long, hard look at the vast empty spaces in our rich land and work to encourage Canadians to share our land and our wealth. Each and every one of us needs to support accredited agencies that are working with partners on the ground around the world to deliver aid. Lutheran World Relief is but one option. There are others. There's a very helpful quote from a Jewish rabbi, Tarfon, that has helped me through this past week to see some light in the darkness. Rabbi Tarfon writes, "Do not be daunted by the magnitude of the world's grief. Act justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." Let me say that again. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. Now this reminds me of that old story about the starfish that are washed up on the beach. Apparently there was some kind of freak tide and thousands upon thousands of starfish were washed on shore and they were going to die in the hot sun. And a little girl was running from starfish to starfish, making sure that each one was safely put back into the sea. And an adult tried to stop the little girl by explaining to her that her efforts were too small. And even if she helped all that she couldn't possibly make any difference. Her efforts just didn't amount to any difference. And the little girl barely stopped long enough to say, "It makes a difference to every starfish that I save." We are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are we free to abandon it. You and I are among the wealthiest people on this planet. Our cups positively overflow with blessings. We need not be daunted by the magnitude of the world's grief. We need to pick something to do. Now, maybe your gifts aren't suited to the refugee crisis. Maybe your gifts are better suited to other work, like the environment, or reconciliation with our Indigenous sisters and brothers, or alleviating poverty, or tending to those who are suffering from disease or illness, or peacemaking, or helping to shelter the homeless. Do not be daunted by the magnitude of the task. Pick a starfish, any starfish. Act justly now, love mercy now, walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. In the name of Jakelin and Felipe, we must do something. I remember little Jay was overcome with grief at the loss of his gift of gold. What could he possibly do? There was no time to go home and make another gold bullion. The nativity play was going to be ruined. He knew it, and he wailed and he wailed. All was lost. He looked everywhere that he had been, retraced his steps, and he couldn't find the gift he was expected to give. It was not where he had left it. So Jay's dad did the only thing he could do. He dug down deep into his own pocket to find a gift to give. He opened up his wallet and looked at bills. There was some money, perhaps a few 20s. Maybe that would do the trick. Modern gold, that's what I'll do. And then he saw it, right there in his wallet. The most precious gift of all. It was a bit tattered from its time spent in his wallet, but it was, after all, his most valuable gift. So he placed it in Jay's beautiful box so that it could be given to the newborn Jesus. And when the time came, Jade bowed regally before the babe, and little Emma smiled up at him, and he proudly lifted the lid of his beautifully carved box and offered up the treasure that lay inside. The audience couldn't see what I saw, but it was a gift more valuable than gold, for nestled upon the bed of satin was a slightly worn photograph of Jay. What gift could be more precious than the gift of oneself? We spend too much time looking to the heavens, convinced that the light to guide us through the darkness is there, up there, waiting to be bestowed upon us by some king in the sky. The truth rests more securely, closer than we have ever imagined. The light that can brighten the darkness cannot be found looking up into the heavens. Light shines deep inside our being. Our light lies waiting to be shown to a world so much in need of that light. All we have to do is let it shine. I sound like a Sunday school teacher. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. All our complicated theologies, they come down to that simple piece, the gift of ourselves for the sake of others. Shift your gaze from the heavens, for the light of the world shines forth from you. Look around you and you will see the light of the world in your neighbors. You are the light of the world, O people. Shine forth, for the world has need of your light. You may not be prepared, you may not think you're ready, but deep within you shines the light that the world needs. Creation is waiting for you. The most profound words that are spoken in any nativity pageant are the words that are spoken over and over again throughout the New Testament. Do not be afraid. Fear not. We've spent far too long looking into the heavens for some light to guide us. The light is not up there. The light is over here and here. In you and in you and in me. The light you seek to guide you in the darkness lies not in the heavens, but here, deep inside. Open yourselves up and let your light shine, for your light is the light of the world, the light the world needs to provide a way through this darkness. You are the light of the world. Shine, shine, shine for God's sake, for all the little people's sake. Shine. Shine. Shine.